I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Digital Mailbox Services, Expanding Customer Delivery and Payment Options. My name is Arlene Itori, and I'm a webinar coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with InfoTrends, DST Output, and Kubra. I'll be working in the background to help answer any technical or general questions that you may have. We encourage you at any time during the presentation to submit your questions to today's speakers. To do this, click on the questions box, type your question in the space provided, and click on the Submit button. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will be receiving a follow-up email in approximately 2 days, which will include a link with today's recorded webinar and presentation slides. The webinar recording and the presentation slides will also be available at outsourcing.com. Now I'd like to say a few words about the Outsourcing Institute. The Outsourcing Institute has a network of over 70,000 outsourced professionals. OI is a good source of information, advice, and best practices on outsourcing. We offer training through OI University. OI also has RFP Builder software and related tools if you'd like to check that out. The Outsourcing Institute has a sister company called CMS where we recruit outsourcing professionals. We'll be announcing our spring roadshow schedule soon. These are local, intimate gatherings. There is a new RPO channel located on our website as well. If you're interested in sponsorship and new business development opportunities and programs, please let us know. Our contact information is there on the bottom of the screen. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to our moderator, Barb Pellow, Group Director of InfoTrends, for the formal introduction of today's speakers. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Arlene. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the session today. And I'm joined by Matt Swain, and Matt Swain is an Associate Director for InfoTrends. And InfoTrends is a worldwide market research and strategic consulting firm for digital imaging and document solutions. And Matt's got responsibility for the document outsourcing and transaction practices at InfoTrends. Our next speaker is Dana Johnston, and Dana is the Vice President of Business Development at DST Output. Dana's got responsibility for the expansion of DST Output's eSolutions offerings, including the digital postal mail, web-to-print, print-to-web, archival and retrieval, web presentment, bill payment, e-proxy, and e-compliance initiatives. And our last presenter is Rick Huff, and Rick's a Senior Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Client Relations at Kubra. And in this position, Rick oversees all sales, corporate and product marketing, and client relationship management activities. So we've got a great lineup of speakers today. And if you want to go to the next slide, Arlene. And so what I want to do today is spend just a few minutes talking to you about what's going on in the topic that's gotten very hot in the market, digital mailbox services. The digital mailbox is an important concept because what we're seeing is we've got a whole plethora of digital natives out there that are used to dealing with electronic technology. And when you think about it, last year the U.S. Postal Service lost $5.1 billion. InfoTrends estimates that 15% of transaction documents were actually delivered to consumers in the U.S. exclusively through electronic means. Now, what's kind of interesting is that the first 5% of that transition was easy, but the next 10% required marketing incentives, pleading with customers to go paperless. But the times are changing. And there's an emergency of what we categorize as digital mailbox services that are going to provide significant functionality. It's going to create new opportunity for consumer engagement. It's going to change who controls the hub of customer communications, payments, and promotions. And it's also a time when digital natives, those that didn't know a world without the internet or PCs, will be entering the workforce en masse. And they'll be starting to pay bills, and they'll become the center of marketing initiatives. And so what we want to do today is spend some time introducing this digital mailbox concept. Then Matt Swain is going to talk to you about research that we did from marketers and consumers' perspectives on the digital mailbox. You'll get some insights from DST output as well as Kubra. And then we'll wrap up with some recommendations, conclusions, and make sure that throughout the course of the event, we answer any and all of your questions. So next slide. And so what I'm going to do first is spend just a couple seconds explaining who InfoTrends is in terms of the work that we do so you'll understand a bit about us. We're a global company that does market research. We've got locations in Boston, London, Tokyo, and Tel Aviv. And basically what we'll do is we've got publications where we deal with current topics in the market. We've got an online report store and a blog. We do custom consulting where we'll do it proprietary to the client and provide research and advice as well as project work. We do multi-client studies, and some of the content that we will be presenting today as a result of multi-clients. That's really focused research that's sponsored by a limited number of companies, and we co-fund that with those companies. And then we've got subscription services for our research work that includes market forecasts, access to our analysts, and it's done on an annual fee-based basis. The focus is the consumer market, office document technology, production print, and outsourcing. So that's kind of a background on us, on InfoTrends. We've done a lot of work, if you'll go to the next slide, in the transaction and mailing markets. And so today what we're going to be covering is the emergence of digital mailbox services. We've looked at electronic bill presentment and payment, trans-promo, the future of mail, as well as the internet and future of transaction documents. Now, when you think about it today, if we go to the next slide, one of the big things that we're seeing in the marketplace is everything is digital. And when you look at it, there are more than 845 million active Facebook users. People spend 700 billion minutes per month on Facebook. LinkedIn has over 120 million members. Somebody joins every second. There are over 200 million Twitter accounts. 20% of the tweets, by the way, contain brand-related inquiries about products and services. And then YouTube is a huge time consumer. People, views per day exceed 3 billion. Over 48 hours of video are uploaded every minute. And so, again, we've got a world that's totally digital. Now, the next slide talks about the concept of mobile connectivity. And I think it's something that we all need to look at in terms of overall communications. I happen to have 3 grandchildren. I will tell you that the only way I can communicate with them today is via a mobile device. If I send them a card or a letter in the mail, it's usually for their birthday or Christmas, so that gets opened real quickly because they know it contains money. If I send them an email, it will go unanswered forever. If I send them a text, they respond in a couple of seconds. And so what we're learning is that in this world today, we all have to look at mobile devices. And that includes, by the way, the cell phone, the smartphone, as well as tablets, which are growing by leaps and bounds. Next slide. The other thing that we're dealing with is that people are getting very comfortable using what I categorize as mobile as a means for making transactions. Starbucks launched a Starbucks Card mobile app in the beginning of 2011 in 7,000 of its stores. In the first 2 months of its launch, consumers had made 3 million mobile payments. It's clear that those U.S. consumers are becoming much more comfortable transacting business via mobile devices. And it's got a lot of implications for the mobile payment landscape, and businesses need to have a strategy to support their customers' evolving needs. So the ability and the concept of transacting business with mobile devices is going to become absolutely pivotal. Now, on the next slide, what we're looking at is that as you deal with consumer preferences and the fact that they're increasingly becoming mobile, there was an article published in the September Business Week that talked about the fact that the electronic media is putting nails into the post office's coffin. And basically the message is that these digital mailbox services that we'll be talking about today are those electronic nails. And they include concepts that are being delivered by companies like DST Output, Kubra, Zoombox, and others. Now, a lot of us in the next slide really defines what the digital mailbox services are, but it's a digital alternative to a traditional mailbox with added functionality that's meant to create a superior user experience. And you've got to think about the payment functionality, but you've also got to think about having access to everything you get in your mail via your iPad. It's that document upload. It's that long-term storage. It's that loyalty program managed. It's access to special offers, all done via a digital mailbox. It's much broader than that traditional online bill consolidation service. These actually deliver the document, not just account data, and it goes way beyond delivery of bills and statements. Basically, a digital mailbox allows the consumer to go paperless. They can receive, archive critical business communications within the service, and so it's a big opportunity relative to dealing with that digital native. Now, on the next slide, what you're seeing is a number of service providers, and you'll hear more about these in some of the research that we're discussing. But they include a number of different companies in the U.S., including Doxo, Manila, Volley, and Zoombox. There are a number of international providers, including DigiPost in Norway, eBox in Denmark, ePost in Canada, Home Bubble in France, and NetPosty in Finland. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Matt Swain, and Matt's going to take you through what we learned at InfoTrends in terms of where people are headed with a lot of these technologies and how people are both leveraging them from a consumer perspective, but also what a huge outsourcing opportunity it is for you and your businesses. So with that, Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Barb. So the emergence of digital mailbox services, this was a study that we published at the end of November. I've pulled 8 to 10 content slides from that study to share up front to help build the discussion for the outsourcing opportunity, in which Dana and Rick will discuss as they go to their set of slides. But let's look at the study objectives. So this was a comprehensive study that we worked on between July and November. We wanted to take a current state analysis on digital mailbox services, and this is a very young market, a new market, and we had the unique opportunity to really be the first research firm doing external research on this market in the United States. So we also reviewed the key players, Doxo, Manila, Volley, and Zoombox. 3 of those are available today, and Volley has been announced but has not yet been released. We also collected some insights from abroad. We did a full market sizing and forecast for 2010 to 2015, and I will wrap my section of the presentation talking through this forecast. And the last point was we did scenario planning and strategy recommendations. So what happens if a major consumer internet brand comes into the market? What if the U.S. Postal Service enters? Or what if a major bank or financial institution enters the market? Now, let's look at the research. So from a quantitative perspective, we did 1,528 consumer interviews. These were consumers that were 18 years of age or older, and they were the primary person responsible for reviewing finances and paying bills. From a business perspective, we did 301 web-based interviews with companies that send bills to customers. So the respondent was responsible for bill production, delivery, marketing, or strategy, and we looked across eight key vertical markets: financial, government, healthcare, insurance, retail, telco, travel, and utilities. So we really did a pretty complete study here in the United States. The last piece that we wrapped with was qualitative research, and that was 25 in-depth interviews with key decision makers from Fortune 100 companies, from major service bureaus, and financial institutions alike. So let's look at a few of the key data points. The first one that I'd like to go into is consumers' paperless expectations. And if you look at, from a consumer perspective, we said, of the bills and statements that you access online, for what portion do you no longer receive paper versions? What are your expectations for next year and in 5 years? Well, 7% of our respondents said that they are 100% paperless today. And the expectation is by 2016, 25% of consumers will be 100% paperless. This is a pretty astounding number from a consumer perspective. And what we find is that consumers that start to go paperless, start to turn off the paper version of a document, if they do so with a few accounts, they tend to do so with more accounts, and eventually all of their accounts. They become increasingly comfortable with suppressing paper, turning the paper off. Now, in this environment, if you think about when you go to an electronic environment, you have 10 different user IDs and 10 different passwords, or 15 different navigations for each of those. It really is a consumer pain point. So if we look at consumers' preference for account consolidation on the next slide, we ask consumers, would you prefer to access the contents of multiple online accounts in a single location? Well, 58% of consumers said, yes, we would. 28 said definitely, 30% said probably. So there certainly is an interest associated with account consolidation. Now, if we look at which accounts consumers would want to consolidate, the top 3 are all transactional in nature. So I want to consolidate all of my bills under one single login and user interface, then all of my statements, then all of my receipts. So the benefit for account consolidation is really around the pain points of transactional documents and business-critical documents, if you will. So when we pitched the idea...
Matt, I have a quick question for you that just came in. Matt, somebody asked, they looked at those pain points, and I mentioned the concept of digital mailbox. When you look at the digital mailbox, am I going to be able to consolidate all of those types of documents into an electronic mailbox?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the service. So some of the service, all of the services are targeting all of your bills and your statements. Others are expanding into, for instance, relevant coupons. We will see if they go into social outlets. Services like Manila have come out with consolidation of my Groupon and my Netflix. So they are looking to expand beyond bills and statements, but to the degree to which each of these services does that, that will vary.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
You're welcome. So when we pitched the idea of a digital mailbox to consumers, we found that there is a skew in terms of who would be most willing to use this. So if you think of your own customer base, there probably is significant diversity in your customer base. 74% of our consumers under the age of 35 said that they would be interested in using this type of service. That declines to 41% of the 55-plus crowd. However, that's still a pretty substantial subset. And so what you are probably working through in your own organizations is trying to balance all of these consumer desires, trying to support physical delivery while also expanding into mobile digital mailbox services and other electronic services. And we're going to discuss this a little bit more later, but this is really where the value of an outsourcing service provider comes in, because that's their job. They manage all of those channels, and they are those integrators for you. So let's look at the next data point. This is an important one. From a consumer perspective, the user wants to have access to 3 out of 5 of their bills, over 60% of their bills and statements through the digital mailbox service before it's relevant to them. So you think about traditional bill consolidation, and it really, the value doesn't come into play until I start to aggregate more content. You can see that for 9% of consumers, they don't need bills and statements as long as they can receive other types of mail. 10% want access to some. But when we really tip the scale in terms of this being a very impactful service, it's really about reaching that critical mass in the number of providers on the network.
Hey, Matt, I do have another question for you
Sure.
that just came in. What kind of trends are you seeing in the digital mailbox? The data that you've got here is consumer-oriented. Do you see a role for it in the business-to-business perspective, like the healthcare industry or other major industries in the supply chain?
Yeah, so the basis of this research was specifically B2C. There are opportunities in the B2B world, and you'll see that, for instance, Doxo has a business-to-business background in that some of their providers today are actually small businesses that are looking to aggregate, say, 5 different chevrons that they own and aggregate all of the billing into one location. So there is a business-to-business play, but for the most part, I think you'll see that the service providers are going to lead with a business-to-consumer angle because the market's so much larger.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
So when we asked consumers about advantages of consolidating mail into a digital mailbox, the top advantage is it's a time-saving effect. I only have to remember one login or password. And the third point's interesting. It will be easier to manage bill payment. So we're not just talking about paperless delivery. Consumers are really looking for an aggregated place to manage bill payment as well. And if we move to the next slide, you end up seeing that from a business perspective, 19% of businesses think that digital mailbox services are extremely important to paperless payment initiatives, electronic payment initiatives. We asked the same question for paperless delivery, and the number was slightly smaller. So businesses are really latching on to the concept of the digital mailbox service, not only for paperless delivery, but also as an electronic payment alternative. In terms of partnership plans, from a business perspective, 40% of businesses said that they were either in discussions with digital mailbox service providers or considering partnerships. And then when we asked, when do you plan to partner with your first digital mailbox service, we found that 45% of consumers expect to do so within the next 12 months in the course of 2012. And so for those who have latched onto the concept of digital mailbox services, it's really being prioritized as a key component of their strategy. Whether they partner themselves or turn to their outsourcing provider who's already done the integration, and it's just a matter of turning on the channel, that's their decision. But really, if you look from an IT perspective, we're seeing more success in businesses outsourcing this function, not putting a strain on their internal IT resources and being able to turn on the channel quickly. So this leads me to our forecast. So based on those 1,500 consumer interviews, those 300 business surveys, 25 in-depth interviews, we expect the digital mailbox service channel to grow to 2 billion documents delivered as paperless through the digital mailbox services channel. And you can see how we're expecting growth in other electronic channels, whether it's a biller direct, going direct to the website, bank bill consolidation, or secure email delivery. There will be growth in those channels as well. So we don't expect this to be the catalyst, but we certainly expect that this channel to be an important one, and businesses and service providers really need to pay attention to it. So a quick summary of these findings, because I want to make sure that we drive home some of these points before I move on to Dana Johnston. So nearly 60% of consumers want to consolidate online accounts. Consumers expect access to 3 out of 5, or 60% of their bills and statements via the service before they want to use it. They're looking to businesses are looking to digital mailbox services to support payment initiatives as much as delivery. Businesses are also seriously considering adding the digital mailbox services channel to their customer communications mix. So if you're just learning about the channel, that's okay. I think a lot of businesses are. But it's important to note that businesses that have already been educated on this channel are taking it seriously and really coming to the same conclusions that InfoTrends has, and that the digital mailbox service channel really is going to be a real market. It is in its infancy now. It is growing quickly, and businesses should create a strategy for support.
Hey,
So
Matt, I have a quick question for you before
Sure.
you wrap up here and turn over to Dana. Explain to everybody exactly how this is different from the current consolidators in the B2C space like CheckFree. What's the big difference?
The big difference is if you look at a CheckFree that's been around for, say, 10 to 12 years, you've reached a threshold of adoption. Consumers go there to consolidate a bill or to consolidate statements, but really they're not. The service isn't providing capabilities beyond that help me manage other parts of my business transactional life. Whether it's integrating the receipts into the mix. If you're a frequent traveler, you know how important it is to manage and maintain receipts. There are other components of managing that business transactional life that these services are trying to help solve that consumer pain on, and that really is what helps differentiate it from traditional bill consolidation.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and I think to that point, and this is a nice way to transition to the outsourcing service discussion. Consumers are going to decide which channel they want to use, whether it is the bill or direct channel, whether it's a traditional My Check Free or bank bill consolidator, whether it's digital mailbox. The challenge from a business perspective is trying to help support all of those channels. And again, we think that the Outsourcing Service Bureau will play an important role here as the integrator that helps manage consumer preferences and deliver through the channel that your customer prefers to communicate through. So with that, I'd like to transition to Dana Johnston, VP of eSales and Business Development at DST Output, to give you some background on DST and also discuss what they're doing to support the digital mailbox services channel. Dana?
Thank you, Matt. And just let me add my welcome to everybody who's joined us today. For those of you who may not be familiar with who DST Output is as a company, we are traditionally defined as, in some circles anyway, as the largest, or one of the largest, or third-party first-class mailers in the country. Today, we move roughly 4% of all the first-class mail through the United States postal system. So from a scale perspective, quite a bit of volume there. You've got some gee-whiz statistics at the bottom of the slide that kind of speaks to what that volume looks like. But traditionally, we've been been viewed as a printer and as a mailer, and we've complemented those services over the years with electronic document delivery or payment services, traditionally playing in the what would be defined as the EBPP, or electronic bill presentment and payment space. What we're also have learned in conversations with our clients, increasingly we're being challenged as a company not to just manage communications, broadly speaking, based on a preference for either a printed document or electronically delivered document, but managing what's being defined as a very broad ecosystem for how communications are being managed on behalf of our clients, addressing the myriad of needs that their customer, broadly speaking, the consumer has. To do that, what we've done as a company, we were very active in the marketplace a year ago. From an M&A perspective, we acquired 4 companies, 2 in the UK and 2 in the US, to kind of round out our offering by providing fulfillment services in some cases, or marketing services, commercial print as examples, to deliver on the promise that we have in the marketplace as it relates to our customer base, to manage their customer communications and not just being very channel specific. Next slide, please. So this gives you a sense of what the footprint looks like. We've increasingly become a global organization. As we all know, the internet knows no bounds. So while we have a footprint in physical print and mail locations kind of geographically dispersed, as you see here, we're increasingly being asked to manage documents for delivery on a global basis. Next slide. Our view of what we would define, at least in our space, as a digital postal mail and leveraging off of the concept of a digital mailbox, there are a variety of channels that historically have been made available to at least to our clients. Matt touched on a little bit both two of the, I guess, channels that have been more widely available than perhaps some others. But if you're familiar with the kind of the EBPP model that I referenced, then you're probably familiar with the biller direct kind of terminology, and that is still very much a part of many of the strategies for some of the largest billers that we support, either a homegrown system or a hosted solution that we may provide. But leveraging that channel for consumers is still a part of their overall strategy to deliver on their customer wants, needs, and desires. Matt touched on check-free as a kind of an introduction of an aggregator platform at financial institutions to give the consumer the opportunity to view and pay bills. But it's somewhat limited in terms of its scope, and its participation is not as broad as maybe some consumers would like it to be. And as that ecosystem has kind of evolved, now we've got the introduction of the concept of the digital mailbox, where really any document that you receive in the mail could be aggregated into a digital mailbox for the consumer to take action, whether that's to pay a bill, whether that's to act on an offer or a coupon. So we're finding that in our conversations with our clients that they're increasingly interested and have actually set an expectation with us that we, DST Output, would be managing on their behalf these channels. And we see ourselves as really that output channel manager, or that company that provides that connective tissue to give our clients that opportunity to participate in any one of these channels. We're also finding that consumer sentiment, and Barb touched on this a little bit, in which she kind of spoke to the concept that we've got a lot of digital natives out there, but we we also have digital immigrants who have kind of not grown up with the internet as perhaps some of our children have, but have adapted our lifestyles to take greater advantage of what that technology has to offer. And we're finding in conversations that a number of our customers are evolving to the point where they're increasingly looking to take advantage of business models that leverage the internet as an access point. So a digital mailbox, from our perspective, is a nice corollary to our physical mail business. It gives our client the opportunity to take greater advantage of what technology has to offer and kind of business models that are emerging as a result. Next slide, please. So as we look at the marketplace and what the opportunity is out there, this is some data that was collected by Forrester. Today, I would say, generally speaking, on the average, most companies could be experiencing an adoption rate of roughly 15% of their customer base is comfortable receiving their documents electronically and suppressing that paper. On the other extreme, you've got folks that may be at that point where they conduct a fair amount of activity online. They are comfortable with buying goods and services online, but for one reason or another, they may not be suppressing the paper, but may have represented that they would do so in the future. The gap, as we define it, are those consumers who don't fall in either one of those camps, and we see it as that's the real opportunity and the real educational opportunity to begin to reach out to those consumers, educate them about the what opportunities exist for them to take greater advantage of some of these electronic delivery channels, and in particular the concept of the digital mailbox. And we're spending time with our clients to help them go through that process of educating the consumer and the providers, the channel providers. I think we will find increasingly this year and into 2013 will be investing in education as well, directly to the consumer, to get the consumer more comfortable with the concept of a digital mailbox. Next slide.
Dina, before you go to this next slide, I've got one quick question. One of our audience participants asked about the vulnerabilities associated with the digital mailbox. Are there any compliance guarantees associated with them? What are the issues? Why wouldn't I do this?
Well, from a compliance perspective, I guess the one point that people tend to highlight is, unlike physical mail delivered through the USPS, the providers of digital mailboxes are not government-regulated entities. But at the same time, they do adopt many of the rigorous standards for data security and data privacy. So things like PCI or HIPAA requirements, which govern kind of how all that all that information, if you will, is ultimately stored and archived and accessed. There's a number of models for how consumers ultimately access the content, everything from authenticating yourself upon entry into your digital mailbox to some sort of handshake through some sort of single sign-on vehicle that gives access. So what we're finding is, and it hasn't been all that difficult to get our clients comfortable with the notion that even though this is a document that is being delivered to a third party, it is largely internet-based. In fact, it is more secure than a traditional email system, but it's a very secure environment, and we've been successful in addressing those concerns. I think from a consumer's perspective, you start to look at it from the other side. Clearly, consumers, myself included, we go lots of places to consume information, and we rarely, if at all, ask that question. How secure is the environment that I'm about to enter to? Now, we're not that free anymore in terms of handing over credit card information, perhaps as we once were, but these environments are very secure, and we're finding that our clients are increasingly getting comfortable with that concept and very willing to expose their client base to these new channels.
Okay. And one more quick question for you as long as we're talking about security. One of the participants said, consumers are concerned about the security of online bill payment, and that's why they haven't adopted it. As you look at your strategy, how are you going to address that to get people to look at the digital mailbox side of it? Or do you think maybe it's a bit of we've got digital natives out there that get it now?
Well, I think there's that aspect of it. There's a whole generation, when you start to look at the demographics, that are very comfortable transacting online. I mentioned earlier, they buy goods and services through online retail outlets. The data security associated with that has evolved. PCI in particular, the requirement to encrypt data using a decryption key to be able to access that data for purposes of completing a transaction. So the way the data is stored today, it's increasingly, and I won't say it can't be done, because we unfortunately every once in a while hear about an example where perhaps some of the standards weren't adhered to. But if you're adhering to the very standards that are out there for data security and for the storage of information like credit card information, then there's ways to lock down that information and make it virtually foolproof. And we're employing a number of those standards, including breaking up some of that information and storing it across multiple servers, so that even if there was a breach to one server, you'd need to be able to get access to 4 other servers to put together the entire account number, if you will, or the credit card number. So, we're very comfortable positioning payments as a component of a digital mailbox solution. In fact, there's data that would suggest from an adoption perspective that is a key component. And the slide that I have up here just kind of transition to that. I identified 3 areas in particular where we spend a lot of time in conversation with our clients. Payments does come up, and the kind of conversation we're having right now around security is a big part of that dialogue. But the other part of that dialogue is leveraging payments as a way of driving increased adoption. And that's a significant, we believe, a significant component of ultimately what will translate to adoption of these digital mailboxes going forward. From our perspective, the whole notion of being channel agnostic is equally as important in terms of interacting with our clients and then becoming, as I referred earlier, acting as that output channel manager. We really want to give our clients the flexibility to choose what channels that they would like to participate in. And we have a belief system that ultimately the marketplace for digital mailboxes will be defined largely by the consumer as the consumer gains experience with the various channels that are available and begins to sort out which one of those channels best meets their needs. And it's dealing with that what, when, where conundrum from a consumer perspective, where they'll increasingly define what they want, what information they want, when do they want it, and where do they want to consume it. So the ecosystem that I referred to earlier, whether it's a biller direct channel or a consolidator channel like check-free or a digital mailbox, consumers will define where they're most comfortable consuming that information. But there are significant advantages. Matt highlighted a couple of those that would speak to the evolution of the digital mailboxes. Really, that place, I believe, where consumers will ultimately go to access the content that they are most desirous of receiving electronically.
Thanks, Dana.
Next slide. So just to give you a perspective kind of where we are as a company, and I guess I would be remiss without saying this. This is an evolution at this point, not a revolution. I probably can't stress enough the need to kind of educate, and consumers will get educated more so over time. And we're spending a lot of time doing that with our clients. But we've got 3 of our 3 large billing clients today delivering documents into a digital mailbox solution. We've got 3 others in the various stages of implementation that kind of cut across different verticals. One is a retail customer, financial services customer, and a large telecom. And we've got a very robust pipeline. There's lots of interest in these channels. As far as our agnostic participation, we today are integrated with one channel and pushing documents to that channel. That channel is Zoombox. We are in the process of implementing a second channel right now and have an agreement in place with Volley. And we are in various discussions with Doxo in Manila to open those channels up to our clients as well, all in the interest of giving our clients choice and the choice that best represents their needs as a business and allows us to deliver on our promise to them to manage, broadly speaking, their customer communications platform. And with that, I'll now toss it over to Rick.
Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Dana. First, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and welcome to this webinar. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Kubra. I just have a couple slides here, just for folks that aren't aware of who Kubra is. I would say we're similar to DST Output in the sense that we do have bill, production, printing, mailing capabilities, but slightly different in the sense that we do have a significant percentage of our revenue is tied to electronic delivery and settlement. So we define ourselves as really a customer interaction management solution provider, both print-based and online channels. Core competencies, of course, around e-billing, self-service, document production, printing, and mailing. We call non-enrolled one-time payments. These would be IBR web or call center assisted payments, and then document or content management. Next slide, please. So we are focused on the North American market. We've got approximately 400 clients. Focused is utilities, insurance, financial services, a variety of locations across North America, Toronto, Nashville, Dallas, Southern California, Atlanta, New Jersey. We are a private organization. Next slide, please. Just a few interesting statistics. We've got all the appropriate accreditations to support dealing with financial and customer information. We currently support about 40 million online end users. Those would be people that had signed up for e-billing that we're supporting on behalf of our clients, processing about 10 million online e-payments per month, producing about 65 million pieces of first-class mail per month. So we're still producing lots of paper, but generally we're seeing our clients grow their adoption in the double digits month over month. We actually have quite a few clients that are in a 30 to 40% paperless adoption range, which is pretty significant when you look at sort of an industry average of 15%. And we'll get into some of the strategies about how we go about doing that. Next slide, please. So speaking specifically on electronic document delivery and settlement, our product, iDoc Suite, we're going to talk today just about our business-to-consumer product. We do have a B2B solution. Combines really 4 very distinct and very much evolving channels. Biller Direct, where people would come to the website to enroll and view and pay a bill, and then would have a distinct user ID and password. Secure email delivery and payment, where an actual document is encrypted and pushed out, and the point of aggregation is in their inbox. Mobile, covering off both mobile apps, optimized mobile browser, and SMS messaging. And then last but not least, Consolidator. And we really, we talk to Consolidator in 2 very distinct manners. You've got your bank bill pay focused consolidators like Fiserv and FIS Global and Yodely. And then of course you've got your virtual or digital mailbox vendors like Doxo, Manila Volley, Zoombox. We have a module within our eBill platform that connects to both of these categories of consolidators. To Dana's point, choice is key. Getting your content out to the widest net of potential endpoints is going to ultimately result in the greatest overall adoption. One of the other reasons that we find our clients and then obviously prospects out there are looking to organizations like Kubra to manage this is obviously not only the pain and effort and resources associated with connecting to all these various different consolidators, and there's about literally 8 of them, the interfaces and the payment files and billing files and whatnot, but it's also what we call enterprise enrollment management. Generally, a biller does not want someone enrolled in multiple channels at one time. They want to try to control that. They want to apply business rules. Well, people move around a lot. A lot of times people forget they're enrolled for e-billing at Bank of America and then come to your website and sign up for e-billing there, and then might open up a Manila mailbox and flip on a Zoombox mailbox. As a biller, one of the key components to this market space is to control and manage that effectively so that it gets a good customer experience. You don't increase your costs, and you've got an enterprise management system. And that's one of the components that we've spent a lot of time and resources on, of being able to manage that for our clients effectively and to apply specific business rules so that their end customers are really enrolled in one location at one time, and they've got a good end customer experience. So if we move to the next slide, please. This kind of breaks out the way we see the marketplace right now. If you look at bank-focused and then consumer-focused, the bank bill pay-focused folks have been there for a while. Really, Fiserv has been the pioneer. But generally, we're seeing maybe 4 to 5% adoption, and they've been out there for 10 years. So if you talk to a biller, generally, and you say how many, if they do have, for example, Fiserv turned on, they'll generally say 5% of their bills are paperless through that channel. less through FIS, and then you've got some more up-and-coming networks like eBids and Yodely. Why is it only 5%? Well, there's a lot of deficiencies and issues with adoption marketing related to that, but obviously one of the big ones is they're only really going after one type of document that a general household gets in their mailbox. A general household gets 24 to 26 different types of documents. Bills are generally 12 to 14, so there's a gap there, and that's really what these virtual or digital mailbox vendors are trying to go after, and even more so. I think as mentioned earlier by Matt, they're now going after things like Groupon and Netflix accounts, really focusing on reward programs. I know some of the vendors have great solutions where you can scan in receipts and drop those into a sub-file folder. The way that they allow people to activate the relationship, where you don't have to actually go in and activate and go through a whole sort of sub-enrollment process, we think is going to have a big impact. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, where we sort of see things and what we've done thus far is we're pretty positive on the digital mailbox vendors. We expect that they are going to represent between 3 to 5% of the e-bill adoption or the paperless adoption within 3 years. We put in our first client back in October of 2011, a mid-size utility. So that utility actually has 4 channels in production: FIS, Fiserv, Manila, and Zoombox. And we were pleasantly surprised at the adoption that we got from Manila and Zoombox within literally a couple months. We had captured almost 1% of their e-bill adoption in a very short period of time with zero marketing. So we feel very positive about where things are going to trend towards. We are now in the process of implementing into those 2 networks 15 to 20 clients in various stages of implementation. And we've set it up so that we can simply turn on these channels with relative ease. And we've also set it up so that the biller essentially doesn't have to do anything to be able to implement these channels. Our plan of similar to DST is also to support DOCSO as well as volume. We're engaged in dialogue with those individuals. So I think in conclusion, an important component when looking at vendors or looking at how to tackle this is, one, you want to make sure the vendor is a knowledge expert, understands the space, can support connections to not only the digital mailboxes but also the bank or bill-focused consolidator networks as well. So you've essentially got one vendor to manage the whole thing. And ideally, you want that one vendor to also manage your bill of direct functionality, all your mobile functionality, and secure email delivery and payment. So you've got essentially one enterprise document delivery and settlement ecosystem or environment versus working with 4 or 5 different vendors to sort of build a complete solution. You really want to go and find a vendor that has a complete solution for administration, management, payments, enrollment management, those kind of things. So, and I think in conclusion as well, really it's going to be the consumer that's going to pick the winner. You know, whether it's ourselves or other vendors or enablers, we're going to turn on and activate the piping behind the scenes so the content can flow, but ultimately the content's going to flow to the best end user experience digital mailbox vendor, and I think that's yet to be determined, but we're very excited about the marketplace. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Hey, Rick, thanks a bunch. That was great. If you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to leave the lines open and see if you can key in a couple of questions, but I want to wrap up with just a couple of quick comments that I think reiterate what our panelists said. First of all, when you take a look at digital mailbox services, they're complementary. They really shouldn't be viewed as competitive to existing delivery or payment channels. Providers are designing this service to deliver a superior consumer experience. And, you know, they want to create branding opportunities for business and a portal for the business website to assist with engagement. You also, if you're going to do this and engage in digital mailboxes, you need to sit down and do a great job at understanding your internal objectives. Over and over again, we see that you've got to really pull together the stakeholders, whether it's finance, operations, IT, or marketing. and understand what the value is for each constituent from a digital mailbox service. And you need to ensure that the service or services you go forward with meet those specific criteria. And last but not least, you've had a chance to hear from Kubra and DST Output. And the recommendation we have on this one is this is an ideal outsourcing opportunity. Where you've got fragmented delivery and payment landscapes, outsourcing has become an increasingly attractive choice. You want to look at service bureaus to help consolidate vendor contracts, reduce capital expenditure and labor costs, and allow for easy integration of mailbox services channels with print and other electronic delivery methods. And so I'm going to, we'll check and see if there's any other questions. I tried to get at most of them while we were going through the session. I think I covered everybody's. I'm going to go to the next slide and just leave it for one more second to see if we've got any other questions coming in. This slide has the contact information for all of our panelists. Anybody will be delighted to respond to any questions you might have. If there aren't any, what I'm going to do is wrap up the session, and I would like to personally thank Matt, Dana, and Rick for joining us. You did a great job, and I think simplified what's a very complex subject and concept. I'd like to thank all of you for your time and attention today, and have a great rest of the day.